Now, Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the US will begin revoking visas of Chinese students. Rubio says those affected will include students with connections to the Chinese Communist Party or those studying in what he called critical fields. He says the US will also change its visa criteria of applicants from mainland China and Hong Kong. China is the second largest country of origin for international students in the United States. Well, let's speak to Andrew Leung now. He's a China specialist and he joins us live from Hong Kong. A very warm welcome to Al Jazeera. Firstly, your reaction to China and specifically Hong Kong being mentioned in this announcement.
Well, the United States has long established its championship of academic freedom. And in fact, a large number of the world's most prestigious universities are in the United States. And that has attracted a large number of the best and the brightest from other countries, especially China. As you pointed out, China now accounts for a quarter of all the foreign students in some of the Americans' elite universities. And as far as the STEM research, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, at the postdoctorate level, China students account for even much higher proportion, as much as maybe 40%. Now, this kind of refusal of visas, suspicions of China's student espionage, represents a paranoia across the aisle in the United States about the China threat. And that's really trampling or destroying Americans' leadership.
Right, you view this as paranoia, as you said. You also mentioned the best and the brightest. Often the best and the brightest coming from China are also the wealthiest as well. And many of those, whether they like it or not, may have connections with the Chinese Communist Party. There are also concerns about those individuals studying in critical fields, so presumably sensitive technology or cutting-edge research. How easy or difficult would it be to isolate those kind of students?
Well, in fact, that the so-called connections with the Communist Party is a kind of overblown narrative because China's political system is such that there are lots of Chinese Communist Party members, but it doesn't mean that they are agents, necessarily agents of the Chinese Communist Party, especially in academia. And secondly, there is absolutely, if there is evidence, I mean, the students or professors would have been arrested or repatriated already. But then this blanket across the board clamp down on the best and the brightest, not only from China. I think that really is a self-inflicted kind of destruction of the Americans' leadership of academic field.
This comes, of course, amid soaring tariffs being levied on China. Are the two connected in your mind?
Well, no, I think that as I said, I mean, this is driving a lot of the top researchers back to Beijing, because some of the researchers have been in the United States for a long, long time, and they have some of them have held prestigious professorships, and even those are now being targeted or being investigated. But as I said, if there was evidence, they would have been arrested already. But this seems to be a blanket kind of approach, sending a kind of very negative signals to either current or prospective Chinese students, and that would only push back some of the top talents away from the United States back to China and to other countries. In fact, the European countries are also benefited because the Chinese students want to have overseas research experience, and instead of the United States, there are some of them are towards European universities.
But on those other countries, there have also been concerns raised by Australia, the UK, France in the past. Is the US right to be circumspect here, given multiple governments have also flagged concerns about the Chinese Communist Party using the government-run Confucius Institute, its cultural arm, to spy and exert influence abroad?
Well, I think that this is also an overblown rhetoric because the Confucius Institutes, if you look at their curriculum. They're really about learning the Chinese language, the Mandarin, but of course that they are funded by the Chinese government, and then because of the global paranoia about the rise of China, and translates into all things for all people. I mean, across the board, suspicion against anything Chinese, Chinese products, Chinese trade, Chinese people. And then this reflects a deep misunderstanding of what China is all about. China's growth is not based on espionage. China's based on its self-reliance in technology and manufacturing. And China's become the world's largest manufacturer, not because of espionage, but because of a lot of hard-earned efforts. And think about what China was like back in the times of Marco.
If I hear you right, you think that a lot of this is down to paranoia and a kind of form of xenophobia in the United States. Let me ask you this as a final question. Do you think American universities can really afford to lose so many foreign students from China, many of them paying top dollar to study overseas?
Correct. I mean, all the Chinese foreign students, almost all of them, except a few who have earned scholarships, are paying top dollar. As you said, I mean, and of course, American universities really charge quite a lot. Not a lot of people could afford it. So that's why it is attracting some of the best and brightest. But I think that the Trump administration counts is really twisting the rhetoric, overblowing it, to say, well, we don't want any more Chinese students. There are lots of other students in the United States who are dying to go into universities like Harvard. But then, on the other hand, they're now trying to dismantle Harvard University's funding, but also cramming down on academic freedom. And then, of course, no universities, no country can also exist by its own, especially in academia. Depends on lots of cooperation with other countries. So I think that this is, as I said at the beginning, is a self-inflicted kind of destruction of Americans' leadership, established over a long time on academic freedom, on the world liberal order, replacing it by rules of the jungle and suspicions all over the place.
Suspicions all over the place. Andrew Leung, good to have you on Al Jazeera. Many thanks.
Thank you.
Katrina, what are the implications of this move there in China?
Well, certainly there will be thousands of Chinese students who currently study in the United States who will be extremely worried that their studies could be cut short by this move. China has the second largest cohort of international students studying in the US behind India. There are an estimated 280,000 of them studying there. And what the Trump administration has said, or Marco Rubio has said, is that they'll be cracking down aggressively on students who study critical industries and who have connections to the Chinese Communist Party. And one important thing to note is that many of these students are likely to have connections to the CCP because of the exorbitant prices or the cost of studying in the United States. Many Chinese students will be from wealthy backgrounds, from elite families, that is, if they're not on a full or partial scholarship. And in China, there are 100 million Chinese Communist Party members almost, and obviously most of them do not have roles in the government. Most of them are ordinary people, but many Chinese students, even though they may not be members themselves, may have that familial connection to the Communist Party. Now, China's foreign ministry has not responded to this latest action. However, on Wednesday, it was asked about what it thinks about these more stricter vetting criteria for students going into the US, and they said that they believe that studies, student exchanges should not be interrupted, and that the US should respect the legitimate rights of all students studying there, including Chinese students.
Katrina, it sounds like the Chinese authorities are being a little bit careful about how they respond at the moment. But is this being seen as being a kind of tangent in the spat between the United States and China, a kind of extension to the tariff standoff? And if so, how might China respond? Would it consider punitive measures of its own?
I think the timing here is very interesting. Of course, the Chinese government doesn't know for sure whether this is basically a bargaining chip that the Trump administration is using. We're currently in a 90-day pause between Washington and Beijing when it comes to these tariffs. They were previously over 100% on both sides, so they're currently in negotiations. We haven't heard much about how that is going, but presumably Beijing could be thinking that this is another negotiating chip that the Trump administration are using. Certainly Chinese students are not sure about whether this is just a bluff, but certainly we called the US Embassy just minutes ago to ask whether they were still continuing to process student visa applications, and they said yes, that they haven't received any particular notice to stop them, although they said just to keep an eye on their website. So far, I think there are still people lining up at the US Embassy, still applying and still hoping that their hope to study at an elite university in the United States, that dream may still be able to continue.
All right, Katrina, many thanks for that. Katrina Yu there, and well, looks like a very windy Beijing today. Thanks.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.